Greetings, family. Welcome to the Alkebulan radio show. We have a special episode for you. First Saturdays is Empress the Empress, and we have one of our favorite returning guests here. Welcome to Coach Frank Lee Williams. We are happy to have you here with us.
Thank you.
And we would like to open up with prayer as we always do. And Coach Frank is leading us. Thank you.
Dear John, we thank you for this day. We thank you that you blessed us to see another day. May your spirit abide with us as we endeavor to talk about the importance of politics and our place in it as a society. Thank you for this night. Amen.
Amen. Ashe. Namaste. So we also have with us, and thank you for a beautiful prayer. We also have with us the Soul Brothers who will give us some live music in this recorded session. Thank you to the Soul Brothers. Shout out to them.
Yeah.
Thank
Wow,
you.
bravo.
Give thanks and praises. Shout out to the Soul Brothers. You can reach them at thesoulbrothers20@gmail.com. And they play many, many instruments. So thank you for giving us a treat with the keyboard. All right, Ashe. All right, so we are on the eve of Election Day coming up soon. This is the weekend before Election Day on Tuesday in the United States. We have a very interesting election coming up, a historical one. And Coach Frank, you were inspired, divinely inspired to come and do a special broadcast with me on leadership, politics, voting. So thank you for coming and welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So in one of our previous shows, I shared that my major when I was in undergrad was African American Studies. So, we were all over that in other shows. But my minor was political science.
Okay.
So, one of the things that concerns me when this time of year comes around is when people say that they're going to opt out altogether, not vote. And the first person that I think of when people say that they're not going to vote, they're going to opt out, I think about Medgar Evers. And so some people, and I'm doubly concerned because when I mention Medgar Evers, there's some people who don't know who Medgar Evers is. And so my question, not just African Americans, Americans, period, how could you not know who Medgar Evers was? I mean, Medgar Evers was that substantial that everyone should know who Medgar Evers was. Now, there's all kinds of conversations about things being deleted from textbooks and so forth. And of course, I'm not going to get into the muck and mire of that because there's some power relationships that's involved with that, and we'll talk about that word politics a little more later. But if we tamper with the textbooks such that our children, grade school children, don't know who Medgar Evers is, that's a problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
He gave his life for us to have the ability to vote. So I want to start there. Now, I think that for some people, the reason why they're willing to not vote, and again, I've heard it all. I've heard all the reasons why people say they're not going to vote. Okay, yeah. But my contention is that the reason why you're saying you're not going to vote is because maybe you don't have enough information.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yes, that happens.
There was a time where perhaps we can find ourselves in that predicament, maybe 60 years ago. Today, there's so many resources that we have to become informed. And so hopefully a part of the part of the conversation that we're going to have is to help people determine what kind of questions they should ask when they're deciding who to potentially vote for. And so the first question I think we have to ask is, ask ourselves, what do we consider a leader? So these people who are running for offices are seeking leadership, whatever capacity, because of course most of the focus and attention is on those people who are running for the highest office in America.
Mm-hmm.
There are other offices that people are running for. So I'll let you answer the question first. What do you consider a leader? Who is a leader?
I consider a leader to be someone who is for the people, someone who represents truly what the people are about, that has certain values and virtues, certain qualities that would be alignment with being like pro-community, pro-nation, pro-family, pro-God. And I think that a leader is able to have charisma and to have like a driving force or passion, a rallying cry to bring people to follow. And a good leader, as we're taught, also knows how to follow, knows when to be humble, knows when to listen, as well as to lead.
That's good. That's good. So for me, a leader is, as you said, someone that's able to follow. And one of my favorite leaders is, and I talk about him all the time, is, and you rarely hear him referred to this way, but he is an apostle, Apostle Louis Farrakhan. He's a leader, and one of the reasons why I know that he's a leader is because he's a follower. If you, just about every time you hear him speak, he's always making reference to the person that he follows, almost always. So,
yes.
so so often the person who's off the rails and not qualified to lead is the person who feels as though they they are the leader and they are incapable of being led.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last person that I'm looking to for a leader.
That's right.
So we're going to start there. But then a leader is also someone that's capable of listening and following instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you run for an elected office and you put together a team, you have to be able to trust your team to make a contribution, because if you can't trust your team to make a contribution, at some point you will be shipwrecked. Because you think about it in military terms, you know, you got this general, and the general has majors and all these different officers underneath.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that the general will have to rely on those other officials to be able to do information that he has to trust them to get. And if he's not capable, of all times we got a fly to join us.
I don't know why that always happening. Energies and spirits. I'm listening.
That's how we know this is important.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important.
I need help. I'm listening.
Yeah. So
please forgive me getting distracted.
No, that force was designed to distract. That's exactly what it was designed to do.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So back to the topic at hand. I like what you were saying about leaders knowing how to listen and follow directions.
Sure.
Because a leader is supposed to be the voice of the people, and you should know what the people want, and the only way you can do that is by really listening. That whole energy around like grassroots leadership is important to me. Like people who actually will go into the community and look at the different layers of society, where they're not just targeting a certain area, maybe the privilege, but what about the so-called underdog or the underprivileged person who their voice is not normally heard. And I do feel like in politics oftentimes it's favored towards the elite. And so to me, a real leader is able to really listen to the voice of the people and also to be able to follow directions.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned give the people what they want, the Soul Brothers probably know the OJs had a very popular song, "Got to give the people what they want."
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a flip side to that. In order to be a real leader, sometimes, and it gets nuanced, because parents are leaders too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the people, namely the offspring of parents, want something. And it's funny, before we came on camera, we were talking before the Soul Brothers gave us a tune. We were talking about different artists that have come, and iconic artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sharing with the Soul Brothers that there were some iconic artists that I never got to see. I never got to see Michael perform live. I understand the Soul Brothers got to see the amazing Stevie Wonder live.
Yes, that was a good show.
What an amazing opportunity. But then you were sharing that you had an opportunity as an adult to see Prince.
Yes.
But then before you went to see him as an adult, you had the opportunity to see him, I think, as an adolescent.
Yes.
So share the proposal that your dad gave you.
Oh yeah. Well, my dad was really strict when it came to discipline and practicing making good choices. And so he had a lot of children. Like I have 8 siblings, so it was 9 of us. I think at that time it was still 7 of us. But my dad was like, you got choices to make. And one choice is I'll give you the money and you could go see Prince. I'll give you the money and you could go school shopping in New York. And I was like, I can't start the school year without, new clothes for school. And the thing is, up north, the seasons change. It's not like in the south where you can kind of get away with wearing like your summer clothes longer. So I made the choice to take my, money and budget it and go school shopping and continue to enjoy my. I still had records at that time, so my records and my tapes. We didn't have CDs back then.
Yeah. So a true leader also has to have the ability to step back and recognize that, okay, maybe the people don't have the full view of what I'm seeing. They're not seeing the full picture, and I've got to get them in line with the vision, which is what you were talking about earlier. So yeah, it's a dichotomy. Yeah, you want to give the people what they want, but you also have to understand what the people need too.
That's a good example.
Trust me, your father knew that you were smart. You were going to make the right choice.
Yes,
so that's why he gave you those
always
two
a
options.
Always a test with him. I'm glad I passed.
So from what you've been telling me, you passed a lot of those tests. Yeah.
Yes. Give thanks for that. One thing, my dad, I talked to my sons about this too. He said, life is school. So we're here in the school of life, although he supported me having a formal education. And the difference about school, the formal schooling, is that you get a chance to study for the test before you take the test. And the goal is to learn your lessons, study well, and pass the test. But in life, it's the opposite. You don't really get a chance to study the lessons. You just are like on the court. You gotta pass the test. And if you don't pass the test, it's because you gotta keep going through that lesson, relearning it until you get it. And the goal is get it right the first time, so you don't have to keep retaking the test because you didn't learn a lesson. So
wow, you said a mouthful. And one of the things that I often talk about as a coach and as a teacher is the last thing a person would want is to feel like they're supposed to be in college and yet they're stuck in the 4th grade. All because they never did pass the 4th grade exam. But when you think about it, we're still, all of this will circle back to the conversation, and hopefully people will be able to make the link because all of it is interconnected. So sometimes we get so caught up in the superficial. Like, of course, we know who Cornel West is, and I was listening to a talk that he gave. In fact, most of us should know that Cornel West is on the ballot also for president. And so often in our culture, with people being celebrity driven, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the Soul Brothers. I've been in their presence. They're really humble, and they give me the impression that they're in music because they want to bless people. They want to encourage people. It's not about being a celebrity. Now, becoming a celebrity might come with it, but it doesn't appear to me that they're driven by that.
That's correct.
Then when I walked through the door, they weren't trying to solicit an opportunity to give me an autograph. In fact, my sister sent me something that is just I I I thought that it was a joke. She sent me this thing on IG about these influencers who were on a yacht.
Okay.
And typically, when you're on a yacht, you will be offered the right equipment to make sure that you're going to be safe on that yacht, especially if you can't swim. And you know, if you're in the middle, when you're in the middle of the ocean, that's a lot of water to drink. And so somehow or another, the yacht, it got to rocking and throwing people here and there. And it turned out that these two influencers, they refused the life vest because they were concerned that the life vest would negatively impact the photos that they were seeking to take on the yacht. Because of course they were on the yacht for the photos. I mean, and so when they got thrown off, they did not have the vest on, and the rest is history. The rest is history.
They didn't survive.
The rest is history. And so
that's a tragedy.
And so I shared that story because ultimately and eternally, and we referenced this before, what does it mean to gain the whole world and lose your soul?
Yes.
And lose your soul. You gotta have soul. Rakim said you gotta have soul.
Yes. I love Rakim.
Well,
God, yes.
Cornell West made a poignant statement. It got me to thinking because, you know, you're a brilliant woman, and
Thank you.
There are a lot of things that you could have been doing with your time and energy just for money. You know, you surely could have decided to not be doing a community-based radio show if you were really all about, you know, getting the paper and so forth. You could have been a gossip person like Wendy Williams and going after it that way. So Cornell said that the reason why a peacock has to strut, because you know a peacock struts.
Yes, I love peacock feathers.
Yeah, they're beautiful, but you know why they strut?
Why?
Because peacocks can't fly. So that's the best they can do, is strut. And so, what we're after is true levitation. We don't want to just, and so when we talk politics and we think about those people who we would choose as our leaders, be careful, because are you choosing somebody that's a good strutter, or are you looking at somebody that's going to help you to fly?
That's a good analogy. Yes.
Because some people, now, we've seen a lot of people come and go. You know, Soul Brothers, they 19 years old, and so, you know, just entering into their first election season. But I've seen some strutters. I've seen some people come along and they're just full of promises. And so one of my mentors, people that I look to, the great Miles Monroe, he says,
I love him.
He says that there's a difference between a politician and a leader. Because the leader is somebody that seeks to help you to fly. The leader's flying. The leader's a flyer. And he's looking to take you up with him. The peacock, the strutter, wants you to believe that you're going to fly.
Yeah, that you're going somewhere where you're not.
No, the politician will tell you almost anything so that he or she can strut harder.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're trying to choose that person that you will accept as your leader, and that's why I started off with Apostle Farrakhan, because he's got 60 plus years of track record that can be verified to prove, I mean, more for some people, most recently the Million Man March, but way before that, he'd already developed a track record to get the credibility to get over 1 million black men to show up at the same place at the same time. Over 1 million black men to show up at the same place at the same time, and there was no no booty being offered, no no basketball courts, nobody was throwing a football, nobody was offering to get high. He got 1 million of them to show up somewhere.
Yes, that's a real leader right there.
That's a real leader.
Good point.
Yeah, so when you're trying to decide who you're going to pick as a leader, you need to look at that person's track record. So never mind what they're saying right now, because a politician will tell you anything to help them strut harder. But then you need to do your research to see, okay, I hear what you're telling me, but let me do some research to see what you actually did before. Because what that person actually did before is going to inform what they're going to do in the future. Now, we know that people can change. That's possible. But then usually you have to watch out when it comes to politicians and politics, if this person is appearing like they're changing overnight, because it usually doesn't work that way. Unless there's some supernatural conversion.
Human nature. Yes. I did want to return to what you were talking about with Medgar Evers and the civil rights movement, and the role that he played with just being a freedom fighter and not being as known. I think about even 100 years before that, after the Civil War, it was called the Black Reconstruction period, and specifically in South Carolina.
Look at your mama going back over 100 years. See, that's a bad.
It was South Carolina. They had a very powerful political bloc of black politicians who were leaders. And that was right before lynching. From that time, from like the 1860s to 1870s, the black politicians, and they were such a force to be reckoned with, that there was like this mass hysteria that black people were going to gain too much power politically. And that's when we started seeing the lynch mobs, and it wasn't just the political power we had, it was also the economic power that we were yielding at the time. And so the lynching became very prevalent during that time in the South to intimidate people not to vote. In addition to that, there were poll taxes, and these poll taxes were really birthed out of the sharecropper system to set people up where they were constantly in a cycle of debt. And then the poll tax, say if you were able to get out of that debt and to vote, the poll tax was to fine. It was really like a fine you had to pay in order to vote. Then you had the literacy tax. And at that time, a lot of us would write our name with an X. And sometimes that whole thing with writing our name with an X, like Malcolm X took on the X because of that, and many other Muslims from the Nation of Islam. The thing about the X is sometimes black men and women would have land, and there would be people who wanted to take that land, and they would forge their signature. So some families have been able to go back and fight for that land because their great great grandparent at that time didn't even have a signature that they would write. They were only using an X. So that has been a way to see how land was stolen through this literacy tax to actually profit off of black people not being able to sign their name. But then again, like I said, it also backfired sometimes, where when white people tried to forge land, they forged the paperwork for the land. They were able to prove that our ancestors were only writing an X. And so I think about that now because a lot of people don't know how to write in cursive. And it's very unfortunate in America. Everyone's so dependent on technology. Even we have like this DocuSign thing, and it really isn't our signature anymore. And I found out that when people vote, one of the ways that they do voter suppression is based on the fact that a lot of people can't sign their signature. So they can throw out a lot of votes like that just based on the fact that people don't know how to write in cursive anymore. And it is an issue of literacy because there are historical documents that are written in cursive that people don't know how to write or read in cursive anymore. So I think about that. I also think about the whole thing around honoring our ancestors through voting. When you were talking about Medgar Evers, to me that was like, okay, being conscious of those who came before us and using this as an opportunity to use our voice through the vote to honor our ancestors. And then understanding that there is a difference between national, state, and local politics. And oftentimes people get discouraged when they look at the national scene, but they miss the momentum and the opportunity that we can stay active, period, on the local and state level, even if, because one of the big things is that we're a bipartisan country. The way that the government is ran, it's two parties, and then you have a person like Cornel West who is running independent. You don't really know about them, and then you don't even really know about the people who are running. You just vote according to the party that you signed up to be a part of. And historically, the Republicans were the ones who helped with the abolishment of slavery and a lot of things like that. And the Democrats were like the ones who the Ku Klux Klan and members and the community who were not so pro the human rights, civil rights thing. They were Democrats. And now today, the tables are turned, where most of the time people feel like the Democrats are the liberals and the Republicans are the conservative. Historically, that wasn't the case like 200 years, 150 years ago. So it's interesting how history is playing out. And I will stop and give you the floor.
Well, you said so much, and I had never made the connection between what you said about cursive writing. Of course, I was a former classroom teacher for about 12 and a half years or so. And it just so happens that the private Christian school that I worked at last, we actually taught cursive.
Mm-hmm.
But you would be dumbfounded. Well, not you, I'm just saying that because In general, people would be dumbfounded by the amount of people that cannot write in cursive. They cannot sign their name in 2024, cannot sign their name. They print, you say, okay, I need you to sign here. They reprint their name. And so when you talk about all the levels of disempowerment, is mind-boggling. But then, when people like me bring stuff like that up, then the naysayers immediately start talking, oh, you're just a conspiracy theory person and all this stuff. And again, what I usually say to them, especially if they're of the Christian ilk, is there's so many conspiracies that you could read about in the Bible, from Haman and Ruth and that whole scenario, that is mind-boggling. So just once again, it lets us know that people are not doing their research. They're not really thinking critically. People perish for lack of knowledge. So the
Mm-hmm.
information is getting to a surface level, but it's not penetrating. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to plant watermelons and you put the seed on concrete and pour water on it, you're not going to get watermelon because you need to put those seeds in some soil
Right.
where that soil and those seeds can intermingle with the water and you can actually get something.
Absolutely. You have some great analogies.
It's all him. And when you used the word prophet earlier, I thought of another one of our greats, Dr. Claude Anderson, and he's been trying to teach us things for decades.
You're right.
Decades.
That's good.
Dr. Claude,
Blueprints.
Dr. Claude Anderson. Around the time, right after Emancipation Proclamation and they so-called freed the enslaved, they came up with what they call Black Friday. And they came up with Black Friday. Now check this out. This is so diabolical. And I'm not going to drill down on it. I told you who gave me the idea. It came from Dr. Claude Anderson, so you could do your research on it. Because some of y'all are going to camp out in front of Dillard's and all those places on Black Friday so you can give them your whole paycheck. What Black Friday was about was it was about figuring out the little bit of funds that the people who had just gotten their freedom, those who got their 40 acre and a mule or whatever they were promised, the few who got it, Black Friday was a mechanism for them to take that stuff right back from them. The little bit of money they had, that's what Black Friday was about. It was this bazaar that they created to retake that money from the enslaved. And all these years later, people are doing the same thing that they were trained to do all those years before. And so there's a lot of things that go on, and we need to really investigate to see what it's really about. And some of these politicians are offering things that need to be investigated further. Sometimes people settle for trinkets instead of true empowerment. Okay,
Yes, too
I'm gonna give you this. Okay,
Too often.
but this thing that you're offering me, let me give you an example. So, the current president gave us Juneteenth. Now, there were a lot of things that the current president could have, because there was a whole push for reparations, okay? There have been people who've been pushing for reparations for generations.
Yes, like Dr. Claude Anderson.
There were people who've been pushing for reparations.
For him.
But instead of any type of true reparations, okay, we're going to give the Negroes Juneteenth because we know that they are really fond of being they're really fond of hearing that they're free. They're really fond of hearing that they're free. So we're gonna make a big deal out of Juneteenth.
So it's interesting that you said it like that because, yeah, there's still a lot of progress that's needed. And some people do not think that we're free. And then, freedom, it's a lot of the mental slavery, the shackles on the mind that make us still enslaved in different ways.
So when we decide who we're going to vote for. What is politics? Politics is about power relationships. That's what politics is. Politics is about power relationships. So, and I really appreciate you sharing the history that you did about the Republicans and the Democrats, because for the life of me, it is mind-boggling that black people automatically give their vote to the Democrats sight unseen today. Why do you
Right.
why do you automatically give your vote to any party?
Right, to any party.
So Ice Cube caught a lot of flack in the previous election cycle because he said, okay, if politics is about empowerment and I'm for my people, I've got a agenda that I want to present to the parties, which were Trump and Biden at the time. Trump was willing to meet with him. The other guy was not. The black community wanted to paint and tatter Ice Cube for only doing what makes sense. Here's an agenda. What are you going to do to satisfy this black agenda? And so ultimately, when you're trying to decide who to vote for, the question is, when I look at my values, you mentioned the word value earlier. How does what this person says that he or she is going to do, how does it line up with my values as a Hindu, as a Christian, as a Muslim? How does what this person says that he or she is going to do line up with my values as a Pan-Africanist? And if it's not lining up, then how can we reason together so that I'm getting something out of this deal? Because if you're not getting anything out of the deal, then it's like you're not even at the table.
Right. And I think it's about negotiations, like what you're saying. Like for me, this came up a while ago, like in this country, the Latino population is growing and they are a very influential political bloc in North America as well as in South America. But here primarily, one of the things that I've always been curious about is why, and Dr. Claude Anderson even speaks to this, why don't we have our own political bloc where we're not in this bipartisan rat race and everyone thinks, oh, just because you're black, your allegiance is Democrat, and if you're a black Republican, you're looked at like this like exception to the rule. I think that it would be very useful for us to look at that model that Ice Cube had at the time. Well, we know what our agenda is, we know what our goals are, we know what the end game is, and we go to each party and see who's willing to stand and deliver and swing our vote towards that particular party at that time, and not be a either or for the duration of the time, but choose either or based on what they are going to bring to the table for us. And there's a politician in Gwinnett County, Donna McLeod. She's been on my show, and she says, you know, make sure that you have a seat at the table so you're not being served at the table.
Absolutely.
And that's, you know, like Shirley Chisholm
Being
was
gobbled
saying
up.
that. Yeah, like if you don't have a seat at the table, Shirley Chisholm would say, then bring your own chair. You know, but she would say you don't want to be on the menu. I don't think I'm quoting you right, Donna McLeod. You say make sure you have a seat at the table so you're not on the menu. And so that's, you know, really where we are, being proactive, because to me, not voting is also a form of voting too. And maybe voting not voting could be actually helping to vote the person in who is the worst instead of the lesser of two evils. But I feel like we're living in a time where people aren't really impressed with the candidates, and they're like, some people are looking at it as a race thing. Oh, we're gonna make history, the first black woman, president. We'll see. They're even saying Republicans are voting Democratic for this particular election. But at the end of the day, the level of accountability, the politicians are supposed to work for us. It's our tax-paying dollars that give them their paycheck. But when you have someone working for you, then there's like some type of evaluation, quality control. You look at their background, their resume, their recommendations, their references. So I do think that it's a little backwards with how the political scene is run, that we don't really look at them as being employed by the people, and therefore they should be for the people. And if you're not doing your job, then you should be fired.
Absolutely. And I really need to say this because I know that someone that will watch this will be put off when we say, well, if you don't get a seat at the table, you're going to be on the menu. Well, what are you implying? I'm implying that I remember a guy named Jeffrey Dahmer, and he liked dark meat. He liked dark meat. He ate people.
Yes, he
So
did.
I'm saying, yeah, some people would like to have folks on the table, literally.
On the menu, literally. That's a little macabre, but I'll go with it. Considering the season we're in, it's All Saints Day that we're doing this recording on. Yesterday was Hallows Eve, and then tomorrow is the anniversary of the coronation. Emperor Haile Selassie Rastafari. So when you started off the prayer with Jah, I thought that was really apropos. This is our Sabbath, and so this is special holy day time, holy day of the week, and holy time of the year, because this is November the 2nd, 1930 was when Rastafari was crowned King of Kings and fulfilled the prophecy in Revelations 5:5. So 72 nations bowed. And you can do your research and look in the New York Times on that day, November 2nd, 1930. And so prophecy was fulfilled in that way. So as we look at the times that we're living in, we do have great examples of leadership throughout history, whether you're looking at the Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, and what he did for being a freedom fighter and speaking to the United Nations, like Bob Marley's song War was based on his speech in 1964 to the League of Nations, 1963 to the League of Nations. So with that being said, I just think that this is a time for us to rise up and be the leaders that we've been waiting for. Like Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Instead of pointing a finger at what other people aren't doing, three fingers are pointing back. And so what do we say? Do we say, what someone else is not doing only, or do we look at what we're doing as well? And how within our communities are we mobilizing for empowerment and liberation? So with that being said.
So I want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of local politics, because like you said, a lot of times we get so focused on the presidential election, but in the local elections you have people like judges who get elected. You get people who become city council members in the local municipalities. And so let's talk about how important it is to get involved in local politics. And this is why it's unacceptable that people would just bow out of voting altogether, because if you and I really talk about it, even some of the local ballots, so many people ran unopposed when
Right. I was thinking about that. The incumbents.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not even a choice. It's just one person, and you just vote for them, and that's it.
yeah. So many people have run unopposed, and so
Mhm.
that's something that this conversation is designed to change. Why are so many of these people running unopposed? And some of these people who are running unopposed are the same people who are denying your license to open your business, because when they meet in their chambers and decide whether or not your area will be zoned for business or not, or whether you're in the proper area to do business, that same person who you neglected to get involved and vote for, they are making decisions. And when we talk about mass incarceration, we're talking about judges and legislators all day, because the legislators make the laws, the judges reinforce the laws. So you mean to tell me that you don't want to vote for your senators and your House of Representative folks when they are the ones who are creating the laws that impact you? The laws that
Right.
impact everything from drug reinforcement to curfews,
Yes.
you name it. Laws that affect the food that we consider healthy or not healthy. And then the judges make decisions, whether it be on the civil level, on whether or not this person who just robbed you, this company that just robbed you, whether you're going to be able to get your money back, and or whether or not you're going to do 25 years for being someone's mule, or 5 or 6 years. When I mention mule, there's a great documentary that I recommend to our audience to watch. Kemba Smith.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, a wonderful documentary talking about.
Was it a docudrama?
Docudrama is better.
Okay.
Yeah. That is exactly what it was. I think the title of it is Kemba,
And it's on Netflix.
it
or
might be
Amazon.
it might be on Netflix. But I was fortunate. I can't remember if I was telling you about it. I was fortunate to go to a screening that happened here in Atlanta where she actually showed up.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think you
remember,
mentioned that.
and I remember in the '90s when her case hit the news, and how now, of course, people will first point out that, well, she ought not to have been his mule, carrying drugs for her drug dealing dude. But she ought not to have gotten 25 years for doing it either.
I know, that's right.
Yeah, and so again, unjust laws,
She was in college too.
yeah, she was in college. Yeah, when she got mixed up with him.
And I don't even think she was a mule. I think that they put the blame on her, if I remember correctly. I think they just put the blame on her for some reason. But maybe I'm wrong. I need to go back and watch that. But to that point, from the work that I do in the community with environmental justice and social justice, some of the people who I work with, they've been enlightening me about areas that I'm new to. So like people who are formerly incarcerated, they're called justice impacted. And there is definitely laws that are more pro if you're like a white collar or you're from a social economic status and you're found with drugs versus a person who comes from a certain social economic group, or racially as well, and our black communities and the black and brown communities, where you'll get more time for something small, like for a particular type of drug that's found in the black community more than in richer communities or white communities. And I found out that they still have the shackle laws, like where people can still be shackled and chained. I actually know of a situation where some prominent members in the community were shackled. And they do like crazy things with women who are incarcerated and say they are pregnant or they have the baby in jail. They can shackle them to the bed, the hospital bed. They also have said to women and actually deceived them, said that they had cancer when really they were just going to do a surgery to sterilize them. So sterilization happens in the prisons as well. So a lot of crazy stuff that happens to, again, those people who they may not have the voice to really speak out. They're the disenfranchised. And so it's really, really important that we look at the local and state politics when it comes to that, because in some states the laws are friendlier than others, specifically in certain areas like this. And with that being said, I know that we're coming to the end of the show.
Yeah.
And we really want you all to be critical thinkers, to not be what we call sheeple. Don't just be sheep, and then you get tricked by the wolf in sheep clothing. Really think for yourself, know yourself, research. We do live in a time where research is so much easier to do, but you still have to pay attention to your sources and not just think that Wikipedia and Google are going to give you the best answers all the time, because a lot of that stuff is biased as well, that it's not really pro our people too. So do you have any closing comments, thoughts, statements,
No, I think
suggestions?
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. I think at a minimum, people should definitely get involved with local politics, even if they struggle around the national politics and who to vote for president, because of course there's some people who feel like at that level there's so many people who are running the shadow government that their vote doesn't really matter. And so even if you take that position, on the local level, that is not true. And so we need to get involved on a local level. So it's very important.
Absolutely. And another thing is the questions. A lot of times there are questions that are up on the ballot, and these questions, they really determine a lot locally and statewide for us. So it's important to not just pay attention to the people, but the questions that are being asked as well. Right now they had text message blasts going around about questions that were on the ballot that were not pro us. And so oftentimes voting no to a question could be the right answer as opposed to yes. We're not trying to tell you who to vote for or how to vote, but just planting those seeds. And as we wrap it up, we are going to remind you all to shine your light brightly into the world. And if you can reach out and touch someone and make this world a better place, please do so, because you can. And this is the Alkebulan Radio Show. We are with Coach Frank Lee Williams, and you can find him on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. And this is Caribbean Life TV and Caribbean Life Radio. My name is Alkebulan Ma'at. I am your host and producer. And we also give thanks to the Soul Brothers for giving us music. And you can close us out with some more music. Thank you very much, Soul Brothers. We wish you all peace, love, and light, and blessings and protection and favor to all of you who are listening over the airwaves. To you and your families, be well and do well. Live good and walk good. Peace and love. Thank you.